pleasure of mine to introduce the ASEF Lifetime Achievement Award winner of 2020, Ms. Sunita Williams. She is a NASA astronaut whose origins stem from Slovenia. I'm sure you have heard about her achievements, but we will get to know her even better in the interview that is coming up. She will talk with Mr. Brandy, whom we met at the beginning of the event.
Good morning here, good afternoon, good evening there, Ms. Williams. Nice to see you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Yes,
Okay.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody who's out there. It's such a pleasure to be here. Very humbled to be here with you.
Before we start, I want to just share something with our viewership. It's been my privilege in presenting the Lifetime Achievement Award to meet some absolute giants. A Nobel Prize winner, co-inventor of GPS, the co-inventors of laptop, a pioneer in Slovenian language, the chronicler of Slovenians in America. And today we meet, ladies and gentlemen, someone of that same quality, that same level of success, and the youngest person we've ever honored, someone who literally and figuratively has ascended the heights, not just in her career, but the real heights in our planet and our system. And today you're going to hear from her. Hopefully I'm going to ask some of the questions you'd like to know. So, Suni, again, welcome. Why don't you tell us where you grew up and what were your dreams as a little girl?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bondi, for this opportunity to talk to everybody and talk about some of the personal things in life. But I just really wanted to first and foremost say thank you. And wow, I'm floored by this whole event. This ASEF community is just spectacular. And I had the opportunity to go to Slovenia a number of times, but not until I was an adult. And I wish I had gone when I was younger. But at the same time, some of the words some of the students had mentioned, this event has made me feel like at home because, of course, my grandparents were Slovenian, and there's so many very typical things that people have talked about, nature and food and music and culture and science. That is what I grew up with. So it's really fun to be here in this presentation, even though we're not physically with each other, but feel like we're at home. I grew up I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, Euclid, Ohio, which I think a lot of people know is a Slovenian hub in the United States. And so that's where, of course, all these things that I was talking about really came to fruition, or what you would want to say really took hold in my life. When I was only one, though, my parents moved to Needham, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And we would take, of course, trips back to see all of our relatives in Cleveland and get refreshed on the Slovenian culture that my parents tried to maintain for us in Boston. But growing up was amazing. My father also immigrated from India, so we lived in a multicultural household with different religions, different food. And I think I'm very, very, very thankful for that, because you get to see a bunch of different sides when you're young, and it's just the way you grow up, the way you feel, and it seems right just from the get-go. So that was really amazing. I sort of took a note from him and my mom, who was very athletic, like most Slovenians are. My father on the scientific side, my mother on the very athletic side, and was a competitive swimmer with my brother and my sister, and grew up thinking about, of course, loving animals, the nature side from both, nature aspect from both sides, and thinking that I wanted to be a veterinarian, but somehow that didn't quite work out for me.
Well, how did you go what led you to the Naval Academy? That's a very demanding academic experience. And what brought you to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis?
Yeah, so just sort of capitalizing on my last thought about being a veterinarian, I as a 17-year-old graduating from high school, did really well and applied to a bunch of schools, but not knowing everything about the world at that time, thought I had to go to a certain school to achieve that goal, and I didn't get in. I mention this just because there are obviously hiccups in everybody's life. to the schools that I thought that I had to go to. And I was like, oh man, now what am I going to do? And I had applied to the Naval Academy because my big brother had gone there, and he suggested, hey, this could be, this could be for you. Of course we know each other, and just our athleticism and, our feeling of teamwork that we grew up with. And he thought this would be a good match. And so I actually got in, luckily enough, and I grew to love it. When I first got there, I really didn't know what I was getting into. It was not my plan, but I recognized that there are things that are bigger than yourselves. The goal of the class, the goal of the military, the goal of the country. All of those things are a little bit bigger than yourself, and I enjoyed being part of that team with the opportunities for leadership and followership along the way. It was really rewarding.
So after you graduated from the Naval Academy, you went into flight and into helicopters. What was your first interest in flight? How were you drawn there, and why helicopters?
So another funny and interesting anecdote here, sort of like the college one. Of course, I go to the school, don't know what I'm going to do. We pick what we're going to do by our class rank. I was in the middle of the class. I grew up, I mentioned, as a swimmer, so I thought something that went hand in hand, very familiar, would be selecting Navy diver. I didn't get that billet. There was only one for women at the time, and so at the same time there was a little bit more flying billets. So I said, "Oh, what the heck? I'll try this." Had never done it before, but jumped into the unknown and said, "Let's see how this works out." And of course, wanted to be super cool. Wanted to fly jets, but didn't have that opportunity, and got helicopters. And I didn't know what that was like, but again, grew to love it. You get these opportunities that you don't even know are there waiting for you, and if you just embrace them and get into it, you love it. And that's what led me to test pilot school, because I loved helicopters and I loved trying to figure out and understand how they flew. I think the engineering part of my brain kicked in, and I was really grasping for that knowledge.
You used the expression jumped into the unknown. You really did jump into the unknown. In 1998, you became an astronaut. So what was it like to compete for that extraordinary position? I know that it's a very demanding process to get selected, because only the very best of the very best of the very best even get the opportunity. So I know you have a great deal of humility, but maybe you could tell us some of the challenges you had there in becoming an astronaut and in the training.
Absolutely. It is very humbling, actually, when you walk around this office where I'm at right now, the astronaut office, and you interact with the people that are here, from the very beginning. I don't know how I got here. The interview process is pretty rigorous, and you meet all of these candidates who are applying, and again, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the, not the sharpest one in this room by far. I'm not sure how I'm going to, compete with these people, but just the pleasure of meeting people, sort of just like the program you're talking about. You meet people from all over the country, because this is the U.S. program, but and understand and learn about the science that they're doing, and just blown away by it. Just like, wow, at least I've had the opportunity to come down here, see what it's all about, and learn about other people doing amazing scientific engineering research all around the world, actually. So my first time I applied, I didn't get selected. I got the letter that said, well, thank you very much. Maybe you should apply again next time. And those are, again, little humbling steps or hurdles, I guess, that you encounter. But with the I think this mentorship and the friendship and support from my family and my friends, other people who had the same background that I have, said, Sunny, really, finish up your master's, apply again, just try it again. And there are a number of folks who have applied a number of times to the astronaut office here, and it's sort of just a matter of timing and, when is the right time in your career to be selected to be here. So somehow, knock on wood, I got selected in 1998, so over 20 years ago, and it was an amazing time, because that was the beginning of the International Space Station. So I actually got to be a construction worker and put part of it together on my first flight, and then operated as the commander and a scientist on my second flight.
You had 322 days in space. 50 hours and 40 minutes in a spacewalk. And already you've demonstrated a couple things for, especially the young people out there listening to this. You didn't get what you wanted right away. And you kept persevering. I have one question I noticed in looking at materials on it. You trained with the Russians in Russia as part of your training. Tell us about that. And did you speak any Russian?
Yeah, so pretty challenging, of course, because I didn't speak any Russian when I got here, but recognize that, yes, they are a very thorough partner in our relationship. As a matter of fact, Soyuz landed just last night with our 2 cosmonauts and 1 American astronaut out on the steppes of Kazakhstan, and we're actually getting ready to launch a SpaceX rocket with our next crew next week. So it's pretty active in the space program, and so you've got to understand these different cultures that are involved, all the different space agencies, the European Space Agency, the Russian, the Japanese, the Canadian, and NASA, of course, and how they work together. So, I embrace that. I wish I spent a lot of time learning Russian. I really wish. I was just mentioning to John here in the room that I need to learn Slovenian as my next adventure, and Hindi for my dad. But Russian took a little bit of time. But we need to do that because we're launching in a Russian spacecraft, and the Russian spacecraft is all in Russian, so you need to learn that. But what's wonderful about the language, just like you guys have mentioned right here, is you really understand the culture that is the foundation of that language. And it was really neat to get to know our fellow cosmonauts and know that they have the exact same goals that we have across the world. People have the exact same goals when it comes to this scientific endeavors. So it was pretty neat.
You're a product of diverse cultures, and you embrace the diversity of the United States and all that the military represents, and you see the benefit of bringing those different cultures, different ideas together. I want to ask you about your 2 missions, 32 and 33, but just first couple questions are just kind of general. What does weightlessness feel like? What is it? We've all seen the pictures of people, just kind of cruising around in the capsule and stuff. What is that like? How do you explain that?
Yeah, it's actually pretty wonderful. You never have a bad hair day. It's all up and floating and all that kind of stuff too. And there's a lot of physical things that happen to your body. So one of the most wonderful things of my growing up is being physically fit, because it allows you to adapt. So there's a big fluid shift also that happens. So people up in space seem like they have a little bit bigger face and a little skinnier legs, but that just naturally happens because you don't have gravity pushing down. Weightlessness itself, just being able to float around, is pretty magical. And at first it's you have to pinch yourself as you're pushing off and floating through the cabin, and then after a little while you don't even remember what it's like to walk, because you've been up in space for so long, and this is your mode of transportation, how you're going to get from one place to another. And you can fly around pretty fast. You can do flips, and if we were having this interview and I was up in space, I'd probably be upside down, and it wouldn't even matter one way or the other. So weightlessness is pure joy. It's really awesome. It's like swimming, but it's also like as though you were a bird, because the medium is just air, so you're not having to push against like water when you're swimming. But it's just spectacular.
You spend 50 hours outside of the capsule, walking in space. And again, we've seen that image. It's a powerful image. What was the sound?
So interesting. Interesting you say that, because when you're out in space, all you hear really is what's in your helmet. When we are connected to through radio to our other spacewalker, and also to mission control who's talking to us, but then you hear all the sounds of your suit. Your suit's its own spacecraft, so you hear the fan going, the air moving, and that's it. You don't really hear other things that are going on outside. I'll tell you a quick little anecdotal story, though. I was outside and we were retracting a solar array as part of our mission, and it was having a little bit of difficulty, so the folks inside were hitting the computer button, which was causing the motor to try to retract the solar array. The same time, I was outside, and I was on the outside of a canister that held that motor, and I had my hand on the handrail, and I could hear that they had done it a number of times. Like I mentioned, there was a little bit of a hiccup with this event, So I came back inside and I said, wow, I heard that you guys were doing that a number of times. And they said, what are you talking about? How do you know? You can't hear anything from out there. And I felt sort of stupid for a moment, for a while, for a long time, actually. And I went back to my crew quarters and I went to sleep and I thought about it. I'm like, wait a minute, I did hear it because the computer sent a signal to the motor. The motor is mounted on a platform, which was inside that canister. The canister is connected to the handrail and my hand was on that handrail. And sound is what? It's just vibration. So I heard it, my ear registered it because I felt the vibration through my hand, through my spacesuit, which was going back all the way back to physics 101 and science 101. And you have to stop and not doubt yourself and look at the, imagine the possibilities, and they probably are right, like Albert Einstein said.
So you've been a competitive athlete much of your life, all of your life, really. You did something in space that is absolutely incredible. Your capsule was going 5 miles a second while you were running on a treadmill in the Boston Marathon from outer space. First of all, how did you secure yourself to the treadmill?
Well, it's
Otherwise, I
very
would
apropos.
take the step and boom.
Yeah, exactly. Very apropos question. Honestly, this is the time frame. This is the week around April 15th is usually when the Boston Marathon is, and this was when my first mission happened during this time frame of the year. And I had qualified the year before, and to qualify was a huge deal for me. I was like, whoa, I actually ran fast enough, and I didn't want that qualification to go to waste, and so I gave it to my sister, we sort of look alike, and I said, well, maybe you could do it. And through some prompting and back and forth conversation, she had talked to the race director, and they were very excited about it. They're like, yeah, have her run it from space, and you run it here on Earth. And so they were very, very supportive. When you're running on the treadmill in space, just like you mentioned, you have to be strapped down. So you have like a hiking harness over you with a waist, just like everyone has a backpack, right? And then it has bungees that go down to the treadmill. So as you jump up, it will pull you right back down. Now, I'm not going to say that was the smartest thing I've ever done in my life. It was probably one of the stupidest things because I was on camera for like 4.5 hours running this thing going, oh my God, I just wish the treadmill would break because this is sort of horrible. But, like every good stubborn Slovenian, I stuck it out and finished it. So that was when we were getting ready, when I was getting ready to get off, the treadmill had just clicked over to 26.2, and I was like, don't anybody touch that until we take a picture of it. I have to have evidence that I actually did it for all that effort.
In a race, you come up to water stations and you slow down and you grab a water and you drink it while you're running. Were the other astronauts giving you water or giving you goo or other measures for incentive?
A new Soyuz had come up, so they brought fresh fruit with them. So they had cut up oranges, and they were sort of asleep for part of it. It was a long time, so they were sleeping for part of it. But near the end, second half, they started to wake up, and they had those oranges, and they're like chucking them at me, seeing if I could catch them in space. But I had also prepared myself. We have other juices up there that I had got some water and juice in the bags and had them all Velcroed up to the wall. So as I needed something, I could just grab it. But they were participating at the end.
On the first expedition, you were a crew member, and the second, what was your position on the second when you were the chief?
I was the commander of the space station. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And how many people were there that you were the commander of?
6. So it doesn't seem like it's so many, right? It's a small group, but that also translates to mission control. We're not up there by ourselves. We have thousands of people here on the ground that help us out and work with us here in Houston, in Moscow, in Japan, in Europe, in Germany, and then also, of course, supporting from Canada. And so that's this bigger team effort. And I'm not saying that I was in charge of all those people, but we were an essential element of the success of the International Space Station at that time. So it's that whole teamwork, some of those basic lessons that I mentioned in the very beginning of our talk here. The teamwork, sometimes you're the leader, sometimes you're the follower. You know your job and you do your job and you try to just do it as well as possible to be additive to the team.
I have 2 questions that were sent in to me by email to ask you. And one was, as you were looking down on the Earth, here you are with this group that's diverse, different cultures, different countries, etc., all working together. Did you look down on this Earth where we're not all working together? And any pondering of the great thought of, gee, how is it I'm up here, they're down there, etc.? And the other question was, if you could travel to any planet, where would you go? So either one, either order.
Okay, well, it seems almost impossible that people don't work together. From that viewpoint, from that perspective, you look down, you're just like, this is the one place we have to live. How could you not be working together? How could you not be sharing? I mean, actually, even having an argument seems fairly silly from that viewpoint, because this is our one home. I will say, during our time up there, it was the Olympics, and so we did have some good banter over the sports that were going on, watching and cheering for our own country, and sometimes against the other country, back and forth, just, as good, honest competition should happen. So that, I think that felt like the only really acceptable competition that should be going on. There's so much that we can do when we work together. I mean, like I mentioned, I'm from the U.S. military. I had never been to Russia. I never had looked at Russia in the way of a partnership before I came to NASA. And wow, we can really do so much more when we put our heads together and work together. Just the program you're talking about, all that international cooperation, and listening to other people's viewpoints and how they solve problems is potentially different from the way you solve problems. And maybe theirs are better ideas, or maybe some of yours are better ideas. And sharing that, we're just going to get better. And so, it's sort of hard to imagine. Now I'm back on Earth, of course, and I realize that, somebody makes me a little aggravated, and that's how it goes. But every now and then you just got to step back and go, is it really worth it? And what can we do to make it better? And how can we work better together?
You've just touched on one of the goals, really, of ASEF, of trying to bring different people of different thought together and formulate an approved situation. I have just a couple things left here in the time we have remaining. What are you currently training and in the astronaut program, and what's ahead for you as an astronaut?
So, yes, I am currently training, and one of these other things that I'm trying to reiterate to my own self is a little bit of patience. We have a couple companies that we have contracted with for a spacecraft going to the International Space Station. One of them is SpaceX, who are getting ready to have a launch this next week with the second long-duration crew, and the other one is Boeing. I work with both companies for quite some time, since 2015, and then 2018 I went to the Boeing side. So I've been working with that company to get their spacecraft called Starliner up to the International Space Station. So we've had a couple hiccups. We're overcoming those, just, like life is. It's not always a smooth path. So one of the things I'm teaching my niece and nephew is patience. It will happen in good time. I think that's a huge virtue. So yeah, I'm hopefully going back up one more time to the International Space Station on a new spacecraft, and that will be really exciting.
That is, we can share with the listenership here that at 10 o'clock San Francisco time, when we were supposed to join and do our test, none of the platforms worked here. We couldn't get on, and we had a big crash, and within 15, 20 minutes, we got on an alternate. Everything went smoothly. So my last area to talk about is, you obviously have great pride in your culture and in your heritage, and which gives us great pride. Those of us that share that experience of parents or grandparents or great-grandparents. So what does it feel like to know that there was a country of 2 million people rooting for you when you were in space? And what does your growing up, your Slovenian culture and heritage mean to you?
Yeah, hugely humbling. I'll just say that. And just to answer that other question, what's my favorite planet? Earth, because there's amazing places like Slovenia and the United States. But Slovenia, I've been a couple times, and I know the people. I've met artists and scientists, engineers, politicians, school teachers, people in local government in Slovenia, and it was just a veterinarian, as a matter of fact. And just an amazing culture, an amazing place, full of just amazing, wonderful people. And I learned so much by going there. I mean, it's a small, hidden part of the world, and I sort of wish everybody wouldn't know about it because it's going to get too crowded because it's too wonderful. But you know, I learned about agriculture while I was there. I learned about arts and culture and history. You know, just in the couple of visits that I was there, and I was like, wow, this is such an amazing place. It's no surprise to me that there was a very strong community of Slovenians in Ohio, and it's no surprise to me that my fondest memories as a kid was driving, you know, as we went, you know, entered the Buckeye State across, you know, driving to Ohio and getting to Cleveland, getting to my grandparents' house, because it goes back to that strong family relationships and around the kitchen table with amazing food, kielbasa, of course, and pizza, and, you know, and black coffee, and, you know, just, you know, that sense of being, that sense of real, authentic living and hard work, and how people appreciated each other. So it's not surprising that it's like one of the most wonderful places on the planet when I physically went there to visit. So I'll be back, and I'm just hoping to make the people in Slovenia proud.
And maybe when you go back to space the next time, you can work with the people that put food together, that you can have some pizza in space and introduce your crew to the wonder and beauty of pizza, because we celebrate all things pizza. I want to thank you and congratulate you. At this point, I would be handing you a plaque, and everybody would be clapping. So we'll just visualize that, and we'll get that to you. But it's just been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. I love your story. You know, everyone that's listening, especially young people, especially young girls, that see the opportunities, that, oh gosh, there's a hurdle, there's an obstacle. No, it was a door that had to be opened. There was a stairway that had to be climbed. And if at first you don't succeed, that adage was true with you. And your career speaks to your character. And believe me, it's an honor to give you this award. And best of luck to you and continued success. And thank you so much for being part of today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brandy. Thank you, ASEF, for this opportunity to come and talk to everybody. And I just love everybody from Slovenia and the culture. So thank you again. It's been wonderful.
Okay. Bye-bye.